My favorite thing about the fall is the changing of the colors. As soon as I start to see those leaves turning red, orange, yellow, and the temperature just dips a little to cold, I start thinking about soup. Soup always makes me feel warm and cozy, so here are a few delicious soup recipes that will satisfy your soupy cravings. From super simple to just a little bit more work, you'll love them all. Westlake soup, Pho Ga, which is Vietnamese chicken noodle, Wonton soup, and instant ramen with all the fixins. We're going to start off with half a pound of ground beef. I'm using, I think it's lean. It's just the one I buy at Costco. I'm going to add a tablespoon of soy sauce, just regular soy, and a tablespoon of Shaoxing wine. Shaoxing wine is just a rice wine. If you don't have Shaoxing, you can use regular rice wine or sherry or dry white wine. We've been known to use bourbon just to give it extra flavor. And if you don't have any of those things and you don't want to add alcohol at all, you can just use another tablespoon of soy sauce. I want to dig my fingers in there. All right, I'm giving up on the chopsticks. I want to get the marinade right into all the meat. So I put on a pair of nitrile gloves to do that. If you don't want to use beef, I mean, it's traditionally made with beef. This is Westlake beef soup, but you can use pork if you like, even chicken, use whatever you like to eat. Even fish. I think fish would be really yummy in there too. It's a simple soup that you can basically substitute any of the ingredients. Setting it aside to marinate while I prepare the remaining ingredients. I'm also going to prepare the cornstarch slurry ahead of time, using about 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Adding about 3 tablespoons of water. Remember, it has to be room temperature or cool water, otherwise the cornstarch will not dissolve. I'm just going to stir this up. And the slurry is used to thicken the soup, because the whole idea of Westlake soup is that all of the ingredients are kind of suspended in this like thick broth, and the visual is supposed to look like Westlake in China. Okay, we're also using 2 eggs. Just gonna beat them. Just lightly beaten is good enough. And I'm using half a bunch of cilantro, just roughly chopped. And I know, a lot of people don't like cilantro. So you can use spinach or green onions or watercress. All those are really good options for the green part of the soup. All right, I am using 6 cups of chicken broth, and I just made better than bouillon broth. You can use a can of broth or Tetra packs of broth, and if you have homemade broth, it's even better. But, this is what I have on hand.
This is the epitome of easy.
You can't even imagine. Okay, turning this up on high, and we're gonna bring that to a boil. Guys, the longest part is waiting for the soup to boil. Maybe I should have started the soup before I chopped up all the other things or prepared the rest of the ingredients. So next time, marinate the beef, then get your chicken stock going, and then prepare the rest of your ingredients. Oh, it's boiling. Once the soup is boiling, bring it down to a simmer or a low boil, and we're gonna drop our meat in a little bit by little bit. We're dropping it in by bit because we don't necessarily want meatballs. We just want it to be, you know what? I bet you if I just put it in there and stir, it'll work.
Uh-oh, this could end badly.
This could. Well, it's not going to cook all at once, right? Because this is a large piece of meat. So I'm going to stir and break up the meat as I go. Taking a wooden spoon, and we're going to break up the meat so that we're not getting huge chunks of meat. It doesn't take long The meat's almost done. Okay, give your slurry a stir. And we're gonna add that to the soup. And quickly stir that in so that it doesn't like all get gelatinous in one spot. And turn up the heat a little bit so that it starts to simmer again. I want it a little bit thicker, so I'm gonna add a little bit more slurry. So maybe another tablespoon's worth. A tablespoon of cornstarch mixed with a tablespoon of water. All right, I think that's better. Turning the heat back down to a low simmer. And we're going to drizzle in the egg. You know what, essentially guys, this is like another version of egg drop soup. So look at that, isn't that pretty? And last but not least, the cilantro. And you can turn off the heat at this point. Look at how gorgeous that looks. I wonder if Westlake really does look like the soup. Or if the soup looks like Westlake. The amount of salt you would add at this point depends on how salty your broth is. So I am gonna give it a try to see how much I need to add. It's very tasty, so not much at all. I'm gonna add about half a teaspoon salt. Add about a quarter teaspoon of ground white pepper. And 2 teaspoons of sesame oil. Give it a stir. All right, let's get some into a bowl for Dude. This is real life, people. My kids are going to youth group at church tonight, and I seriously have to get dinner on the table. So let's get started. I have 1 giant onion here. You can use 2 smaller ones. I'm gonna cut it in half, and we are going to char the onion in the pot. And this will just add depth of flavor. Turning my pot on to medium-high heat. I am adding a tablespoon of avocado oil, and you can use whatever cooking oil. Just make sure that it's neutral, like a canola oil or vegetable oil. And I know for my pot, I have to add the oil right away. In the meantime, I also have a giant thumb size piece of ginger. I am going to, maybe I'll just cut this in half, and we're gonna char this along with the onions. Pho Ga can be more complicated to make by making the chicken stock from scratch. So we're doing some little cheats today by using chicken broth. And also I'm gonna be poaching my chicken in the liquid, so that will also add flavor to the broth. Once your oil is hot, we're gonna put the onions down. I'm going to put it down the other way. Along with the ginger, face down. And we're gonna let this cook untouched for 5 to 10 minutes until you start to see that dark caramelization on the bottom. And it could be burnt as well, like you really want that deep flavor in the onions. We just turned off the heat. I think it's been about 4 minutes, not even 5. I just want to show you the bottom. That's what you want, to be totally charred, just like that. Check out the ginger. Adding a tablespoon of rock sugar. And if you don't have rock sugar, you can use a tablespoon of regular sugar. 2 star anise. And 4 cloves. The sizzling is just from the heat of the pot. I've completely turned off the stove already. We're also adding half a teaspoon of coriander. I'm using ground coriander. If you don't have ground coriander, you can use a teaspoon of whole coriander and just toss them in there. And 1 stick of cinnamon. Adding 4 cups of water. I'm also adding 6 chicken thighs. That's about a pound of chicken thighs. We're just gonna plop them in there in the cold water. And this is, we're gonna poach the chicken so that it's cooked and we have chicken to go with our noodles. And this will also add flavor to the soup. Make sure the chicken is submerged. We're turning the heat back on high. We're gonna bring the water to a boil, and then we're going to lower the heat and let the chicken cook in a simmer. All right, I'm sorry, I completely forgot to add the fish sauce. 3 tablespoons. And a bunch of cilantro. Just toss that on top. All right, now we're gonna wait for it to boil. While we're waiting for everything to boil, I am going to cut up some cilantro for garnish. This will go top your soup in your bowls. So just a little bit, maybe about 2 tablespoons worth. If you don't like cilantro, you can leave it out. Even in the soup, if you don't like the cilantro, just leave it out. Once it's reached boiling, just a gentle boil, I'm going to turn the heat down to low. Let it simmer. All right, just like that. We're going to put the lid on and we're going to cook it for 10 minutes. A couple years ago, I planted some seeds for bunching onion, but they never grew. And lo and behold, now they're growing out of nowhere. It's so bizarre. This was 2 onions. So I'm just going to chop it up and we're going to use it to garnish our pho. But this is awesome.
Well, anything that's free is awesome.
Right, like 2 onions. It looks like 3 or 4 onions here. All right, that's a lot, eh?
It is.
Just gonna put it onto this plate. All right, it's been 10 minutes. Okay, we're gonna fish out the chicken. You know, I used chicken thighs today, but if you guys wanna use chicken breast, you can totally do that. We're gonna let these rest on the board for about 5 minutes. I'm gonna turn my pot back on to boiling, and we're gonna add 4 cups of chicken broth. This is so that we get enough broth for all the soup noodle bowls. So this will serve 4 to 6, and we don't want to run out of soup. This is the cheater part, because we're not cooking a whole chicken and using that broth, which takes a lot longer. This is just a quick version of Pho Ga that you can feed your family quickly, in a healthy manner, good tasting, delicious meal.
Way better than instant.
Yes, way better than instant. And way easier on the pocket than paying, what, $16, $18 a bowl of pho these days. It is just way too expensive to eat out. All of this is less than, I don't know, my chicken was like $7. The noodles are like $2. Okay, chicken broth is probably the most expensive at like $3. 12 bucks, guys, for the whole thing. Once it's boiling, turn it down to a simmer, and we'll just let that simmer until we've cut up all the chicken. I'm just gonna thinly slice the chicken.
Yeah, that's a lot of chicken.
Yeah, not bad, right? It's a pound of meat. We are using this Vietnamese pad thai noodle. They're like a rice stick noodle, and they literally take 2 seconds in boiling water to heat through. So that's why I like using the fresh, and it's like $2 for a pound of noodles, and this will feed 3 to 4 people. You can get them dried and just follow the package instructions on how to rehydrate those. Right, turning off the soup. Oh, if you guys could smell how delicious this all smells, it's amazing. All right, so here's the noodles already rehydrated. Adding some chicken. I'm gonna spoon the soup in. All right, it already looks like the restaurant, right? Add some cilantro and some green onions. And that's it. It's going to be served with some bean sprouts, some chili, if you want to add some chili. I'm just gonna leave them whole because we really don't use them, but you can slice them up. I have some lime that we'll squeeze on top. And lo and behold, Thai basil that I planted in the spring finally decided to sprout a few weeks ago. I'm chopping up about 12 ounces of shrimp into smaller pieces. I like the mouthfeel of biting into pieces of shrimp, but if you can't be bothered, you can easily just toss all of the ingredients into a food processor and blitz it a couple of times. I'll put the shrimp into a small mixing bowl. We're using the white parts only of the green onion for the shrimp mixture. I'm cutting up 2 green onions, and then the rest of the green onion we're going to use as garnish. I have a small, tiny piece of ginger here, barely a thumb size. It's gonna give me about a teaspoon of grated ginger. I'm just gonna grate it right into the shrimp mixture. Okay, let's marinate the shrimp with the sauces. Adding 1 teaspoon of soy sauce. This is light soy or regular soy. 1 teaspoon of oyster sauce. Oyster sauce will add a little bit of umami to it. So it's good to use, but if you don't have oyster sauce, you can just use another teaspoon of soy sauce. And half a teaspoon of sesame oil. 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. About 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground white pepper. Good pinch of salt. And to add even more flavor, I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of chicken bouillon. And I'm just using this better than bouillon. I'll just mix until everything is mixed in well. Forgot to mention, if you don't have that better than bouillon, chicken bouillon, you can just use regular bouillon. While the shrimp is marinating, I'm going to make my broth. Just on high, I'm gonna bring 4 cups of water to boil, and I'm gonna add the chicken bouillon to it. If you have like a Tetra Pak of chicken broth, you can just use that. And it's 1 teaspoon per cup of water to make the broth. If you have the leftover shells from the shrimp that you maybe had to take off, you can add the shell to the broth as well to add some flavor, and then you'll just like strain out the shells before you serve it. All right, I'm also using about a thumb-sized piece of ginger that I'm gonna add. I'm just gonna smash it to expose some of the ginger to add to the flavor of the soup. And while I've got the mallet out, I'm just gonna crush my 2 cloves of garlic as well. Once the broth is coming up to a boil, turn it down to a simmer, and we're gonna let that simmer for about 10 minutes. While the soup is simmering on the stovetop, I am now bringing a pot of water to boil to cook the wontons. I have it comes in a double pack of wonton wrappers. And the difference between wonton and dumpling is that the dumpling wrappers are thicker and wontons are
essentially just a subcategory of dumplings. It is a dumpling, it's being wrapped. So wonton wrappers, the ones I'm using are egg-based, and I think you can get ones that are not. So I like the egg wonton wrappers because of the texture. It's just more delicate than the regular wonton wrappers. And dumpling wrappers are just way thicker, and it just doesn't work for wonton. Okay, I also have a little bowl of water ready to go, and that's to help seal the wrapper. You're gonna put about a teaspoon of shrimp in the wrapper. And we're going to wet the edge, fold it in half, seal it, and then that's it. This amount should make about 3 dozen wonton. So you can either serve them with noodles, then you can make a full meal with the wonton, or you can just eat them as they are. All right, I have about 10 ready to go, and we're just gonna film this part so that dude can do the taste, and then I can finish making the wontons afterwards. Look at that, perfect. Water's just boiled. So once your water is boiled, just add your wonton. And we're gonna cook them for about 5 minutes until they float. I'm just turning down the heat because it doesn't actually have to be a rolling boil. Okay, once they're floating, cook them for another minute, and then we're gonna scoop them out right into the bowl for serving. People often ask why I don't just cook the wontons in the broth that I'm serving it with, and the answer is the wontons release starch and other things into the soup that I don't want, and so we want the broth to be clear to eat with the wonton. We're gonna add 4 teaspoons of soy sauce to the chicken stock, 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, and a pinch of white pepper. Give that a stir. And add some green onions to the wontons, and let's spoon some of the broth into the bowl. All right, that's it.
We're using this Korean instant noodle today, and even in the picture, right? Like it has stuff on the noodles. It doesn't just show the noodles by themselves. And yet I found well, especially when I was younger, I often just ate instant noodles by themselves because that's the way, I don't know, maybe I just didn't think to add anything more to them. So let me get my water started. So y'all know one of Dude's favorite things is...
Yeah, spam.
So while the water is about to boil, I'm going to slice up a couple of slices of Spam for him.
It's not just my favorite. The kids adore Spam as well.
I know, and it just... I don't
warms
even
your heart,
know.
Flo.
Come on out, Spam. No, it doesn't want... Oh, it's kind of coming out now. There we go. Part of the secret of tasty Spam, according to my husband and kids, is to cut it thinly, so about 1/4 of an inch, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And it's really quite subjective.
You can cut bigger slices if you want, but they love the crispiness on the edge of the Spam as I'm going to fry it up. I'm not going to just add this to the instant ramen.
Oh, heavens no.
So just 2 slices?
Yeah.
All right, because you know what? We also have 2 eggs. I'm gonna boil the noodles for 2 minutes, even though the package says 3. Trust me, 2 minutes is enough. Okay, that was 2 minutes. Taking the noodles out into my serving bowl. And I'm not even gonna do the soup part because check out that water. Do you really want to be drinking that?
Nope.
So for a cleaner taste, I usually boil water on the side and make the soup afterwards. But I'm just gonna let this sit for a second because I have to show you how to fry up the Spam and the egg. Okay, so I have my frying pan out now. Turning it on to medium-high heat. When your pan is hot, and you can tell by there's a wisp of smoke. We're gonna add our oil, about 2 tablespoons. Okay, because I want to fry my eggs up really crispy. Also gonna add my Spam. Season the eggs a little bit with some salt. Okay, flipping the Spam over. Well, that's not very crispy, dude.
Not yet. You gotta be patient, girl.
Well, that one's better. All right, the eggs are done, so I'm gonna put them right on top of my instant noodles. Okay.
Oh, I like how that char is building up.
So I am not a Spam expert, as you can tell, but next time I think I will start with frying up the Spam first before doing the eggs.
I know you just wanted to not be bothered and get it all done in one shot.
True. All right, but look, they're almost there.
You're good right now, yeah.
Ooh, look at that. All right, I'm gonna turn the heat off and get my soup going. All right, so adding the soup base straight to the noodles. And I boiled water in a kettle on the side. Just gonna add that, and it just melts. But you can use your chopsticks to move it around, to make sure it all dissolves. Okay, adding your Spam. And some green onions for extra. And I think we have some dried shallots too, or fried shallots. Do you want some of that?
Yes, please.
All right. Do you know how much this would cost in a restaurant?
How much, Flo?
I looked it up recently at our favorite Hong Kong style cafe. This, 2 eggs, 2 slices of Spam with instant noodles or instant ramen for $17.49.
Ouch.
I can't even, I don't even understand how that's possible. So to help you understand how much I spent on this bowl of noodles, less than $1 for the noodles, probably 50 cents. An egg each is about 50 cents each, so that's $1.50. That can of Spam I buy from Costco in bulk, and so 3 packages of Spam is about $10, so 1 pack and just 2 little slices from there, what, less than $1 for those 2 slices of Spam? So $2.50 maybe for this bowl of noodles.
Let's just say $2.